Yes.
So we know that nuclear energy we obtain directly from two processes, the nuclear fission and the nuclear fusion. Now, before discussing the details about nuclear fission and fusion, I would like to know that do you all know about the basis for this, basis for nuclear energy? What is the basic principle behind this?
Ma'am, energy mass equivalence.
Yes. So,
Mhm.
in the year, I think you all must have studied, and we all know that in the year 1905, Albert Einstein, so he first hypothesized that mass and energy are related. So we have this famous equation which states that E is equal to mc
MC
square.
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 So this is what is happening in the nuclear reactions. So in this, what is converting into energy? Matter. Matter
Mass.
is converted into energy and it releases vast amount of heat. So this energy we are utilizing to generate electricity, and we have made power plants from it. So we have nuclear energy power plants which is supplying electricity to many parts of the world. So now coming to the two reactions, nuclear fission and fusion. So who will explain what is nuclear fission?
And the breaking of the large unstable nucleus into two or more smaller nuclei or smaller components, which releases
Yes.
energy.
Yes. So that is the process of nuclear
Fission.
fission. And we see uranium 235 nuclei. So these are mostly used in the nuclear reactors. So here it is that fission of unstable nuclei is generating a lot of energy. So it is converted into smaller nuclei. It is also releasing neutrons for carrying on the reaction, and along with it, it is also releasing energy. Then what is the second process? Second process is the fusion.
Nuclear fission.
It is just
Fusion.
opposite to
Fission.
Nuclear
fission.
fission.
Nuclear fission.
So what happens in fusion?
And two or more unstable nuclei are combined together to form a larger molecule or nucleus.
Yes. So in this process, in the process of fusion, a heavier nucleus is formed from two lighter elements. So where is enormous fusion occurring in nature?
And
Sun. So you can see how sun is already a conduit of energy. It produces abundant energy which is actually leading to the sustenance of life and the ecosystems on the earth. And we also have one more process apart from nuclear fission and fusion. What is that?
nuclear decay. Nuclear decay.
Yes. So what is nuclear decay? So it is a process by which an unstable atomic nucleus loses its energy. So this is radioactivity, okay? Radioactive decay. So these are the three processes by which nuclear energy is released. Now coming to nuclear reactor. So before coming to nuclear reactor, I would like to discuss nuclear fission in detail. So if we are generating power through nuclear resources, then mostly nuclear fission is used. So you can see it is a kind of a chain reaction. So you have to just power one uranium, one fission process through single neutron, then it releases enormous amounts of neutrons along with energy. And these neutrons in turn will again carry out the fission of other uranium 235 nuclei, and this process will carry on exponential manner. There will be an exponential chain reaction and it will produce a lot of energy. So if it is not controlled, then this can be catastrophic. So if the chain reaction is not controlled, then it will lead to destruction. So that is why there are higher risks associated with nuclear energy. We have to use it. Okay, it is a very clean fuel. It is environmental friendly, but there are equal risks associated with it. So whatever reactor we design, we have to control it very efficiently. So this is the major drawback with using the nuclear energy. And whatever energy we generate, so that is used to produce steam, which runs the electric turbine, and we generate electricity, which is spread through the grids. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So nuclear power uses nuclear reactions to produce electricity, and it can be obtained from nuclear fission, nuclear decay or nuclear fusion reactions, but majorly fission use hota hai. Okay, and coming to the nuclear fuel, uranium. So uranium is exclusively used as the nuclear fuel, and we obtain uranium from the uranium ore, and it is again a non-renewable resource. Why it is a non-renewable resource?
Because it is again extracted from the ocean surface, just like ozone. I guess it could be.
It will be depleted. The reserves are finite. So it will get depleted in the near future if we are not using it properly. And one more thing I want to mention here is that the uranium which we get in the ore is the U-238. But the fissionable uranium is U-235.
235.
So which has a very less percentage in the ore itself. So this makes it all the more non-renewable. So if we, so uranium goes through the nuclear fuel cycle. So when we are using it in the nuclear power plants, we are just following a nuclear fuel cycle. So which is starting from mining to its disposal. तो सिर्फ mining नहीं है, उसका disposal भी है. ये सारा fuel cycle में आता है. And so this is the fuel cycle. What is the first step in the fuel cycle? First, the uranium is mined, then it is enriched. What do you understand by enrichment? In enrichment, you are increasing the percentage of U-235 nuclei so that it becomes more fissionable. You can see in this picture that the natural uranium, it contains 99% of U-238 nuclei, whereas U-235 is very less. Now we are doing the enrichment. So it is known as lower enrichment. In this, we are increasing U-235 to 3 to 5%. And sometimes we can also highly enrich it. So in highly enriched uranium, the percentage of U-235 increases to around 85%. So if we come to reactor grade enrichment, then the reactor grade enrichment is low. It is 3 to 5% of U-235. So first step is mining. Then in the first step, you are mining, you are enriching it, and then you are making it into a nuclear fuel. So after it is processed, it will look like this. This is the fuel. And then it is made up into fuel rods. Can you see?
Can you please repeat?
Okay, so we are obtaining the fissionable fuel from uranium, and
Yes.
this follows a fuel cycle. So you have to mine the uranium from the ore, and the uranium which you have mined from the ore has less amounts of the fissionable U-235 nuclei, and you have to enrich it. So by enrichment, you are increasing the percentage of U-235 in the uranium. Okay, you are increasing it. So the
ठीक
first
है
step So the first step in the nuclear fuel cycle is the mining of uranium, its enrichment, and its manufacture it into a nuclear fuel. So after enrichment, the pellets look like these. ऐसे pellets बन जाते हैं after extraction, mining and enrichment. Now these pellets you will be loading into fuel rods. So this is the first step. Now these fuel rods are delivered to the nuclear power plants. Okay? So this has come into nuclear power plants. Then it will be used to generate electricity in the nuclear power plants. After generation of the electricity, the used fuel, which is also known as the spent fuel, is delivered to a reprocessing unit. It is a nuclear waste. You cannot just dispose it off like that. So after producing, yeah, any doubt?
मैम ये क्या है कैन डू CANDU कैन डू रिएक्टर्स वर्क विद न्यूट
So
इसका मतलब क्या है
this is about the breeder reactor. So we will come in the subsequent slides. I will talk about the breeder reactors in few moments. In a few moments. Okay.
ओके मैम
Okay. So so you understand the fuel cycle?
Yes, ma'am.
So first of all, the uranium is mined, enriched, and packed into fuel rods and sent to a nuclear power plants. There it is used, and then after the usage, the spent fuel is delivered to a reprocessing plant. So there it is reprocessed. Then in the third step, in nuclear reprocessing, 95% of spent fuel is recycled and again used in a power plant. So this is how a fuel cycle works. Now coming to the reactor. So who will explain the nuclear reactor? You must have studied these reactors. So ये हम काफी junior classes से पढ़ते आ रहे हैं. So what do you understand by nuclear reactor?
Basically, the heat released due to nuclear fission is basically used to convert water into steam, and that is used to rotate the turbine, and then the water is then condensed and then goes back to the building that here it is mentioned as containment building, and that again the cycle continues. And after the steam is after the water is converted into steam, then it is used to rotate the turbine, and basically the generator runs and the electricity is generated and passed to households and different various purposes.
Okay, this is about electricity generation, but you have missed upon some important points in a reactor. What are these? Can you see the control rods? Now,
Yes,
who will
ma'am.
tell me the function of the control rods? See that these are very generic things, so you must have been studied. So I want this to be a very good discussion over here. So what are these control rods? How are they made up of, and what is their function?
ये मैम ग्रेफाइट की बनी रहती हैं और ये यूरेनियम का ज़्यादा मतलब फिजन नहीं होने देते हैं
Okay, how this happens? So let us go back to this diagram once again. Can you see these neutrons? And the exponential generation of these neutrons make this reaction uncontrollable. Now, what are we doing by inserting the control rods in the fuel rods? So we are just absorbing these free neutrons. So we are controlling the fission reaction by absorbing these free neutrons, and this is done by the fuel rods. This is done by the control rods. Okay, so when I am lowering the control rods into the fuel rods, then what would be the speed of the fission when the control rods are completely inside?
Decrease कर जाए.
Huh?
Decreases.
Yes. So the speed would be minimum. The fission reaction would be occurring at a minimum rate. Now, when I completely take these control rods out, then
it will definitely increase.
Reaction की speed ज़्यादा हो.
Highest
reaction will
reaction.
become uncontrollable. So you have to control the nuclear reaction through these control rods, and these are set at the optimum position in the nuclear core. So core में ही आपका यूरेनियम प्रेजेंट होगा, core में ही control rods है. And can you see how it is contained, this core? So this is containment is very thick. And what is the function of this containment?
To protect environment from the radiations.
Very
Also
good.
to prevent the I think leakage of any.
Concrete से बना हुआ था.
Yes, it is very thick. So layers and layers of concrete, so that the radioactivity does not leak. So that is the most important function of the containment building. Now, ये uranium fuel is enriched uranium. So यहाँ पे मैंने दिखाया था ना, these are the uranium pellets and these are made into fuel rods. These are actually the fuel rods which are present in the core. So what is happening in a reactor? There is controllable fission. You start off the reaction by a single neutron. You put the control rods at specific positions. You control the fission reaction. You generate heat, and through this heat, you heat the coolant, which is usually water. So when the water is heated, the steam is produced and the turbine is rotated and electricity is produced and sent off to the grids, and it reaches the domestic and industrial places. And this process continues, and we can generate enormous amount of energy by using nuclear reaction. So these are the components of a nuclear reactor. So we have studied about the control rods, which is the boron. We have studied about the coolant. So we have studied about the shielding. This is the containment, 2 to 25 meter thick concrete containment we have. And we have the nuclear fuel, which is the U-235. Now, what is a moderator? You understand the term moderator?
Yes, ma'am. It's moderate the speed.
Yes, ma'am, we understand
What is
moderate.
it doing?
Ma'am, it slows down the speed of neutrons.
Yes.
Speed of neutron. Decrease the
For
speed of
example,
neutron.
heavy water, ma'am. For example, heavy water.
Yes. एक एक करके बताओ. Who will explain moderator? Yes, Swapnil.
Ma'am, moderators are used to slow down the speed of the fast traveling neutrons. For example, heavy water. This is used to
Yes.
control the reaction.
Yes. And we all know why we need to control the nuclear reactions. If it is let uncontrollable, then it will be disastrous. Disastrous for the environment, for the humankind, for everyone. And nuclear disaster is not a disaster which can be contained very easily. It goes from generations to generations. Yes?
Ma'am, how
heavy water controls speedy neutrons.
So it is preventing collisions. So it is interchanging the energy and slowing down the neutrons.
Only collides, ma'am.
Yeah.
मैम ओनली कोलाइड्स
Basically, देखो जब न्यूट्रॉन्स मूव कर रहे हैं तो उनका एनर्जी हाई है, हमें उनको स्लो डाउन करना है. So what we will do? We will use a moderator and we will exchange the energy.
Yes.
Okay.
यस मैम यस मैम यस मैम
Okay. So now coming to, so before advantages and disadvantages, I want to discuss another type of nuclear reactors with you all. So we also have breeder reactor. So what happens in breeder fission? You know about breeder fission? So in a breeder fission, we utilize the U-238 as it is. So we are not enriching it. So what happens in the breeder fission? This U-238 is converted to plutonium. So it is Pu-239, which is a fissionable isotope of which is not found in nature. So the U-238 is converted into fissionable plutonium. So this is the way how we can use U-238 without enriching it. So a breeder reactor thus makes more fissionable fuel than it uses. तो जैसे ही U-238 का fission होगा और ज्यादा fuel produce होगा वहां पर, क्योंकि वो plutonium में convert हो जाएगा, which is again fissionable. So now can you imagine that how enormous this reaction would be, the breeder reaction?
Yes, ma'am.
So it can generate much larger quantities of energy from the uranium ore than the nuclear fission of U-235. So a breeder fission reaction will produce more energy.
More energy.
Yes. So we have to control it even more efficiently. Then we also have another kind of nuclear reactor, which is mixed oxide fuel reactors. So mixed oxide fuel reactor में क्या होता है? So you have U-235 and you have the extracted plutonium. So जो already spent fuel में plutonium होता है, you use that and you use U-35. तो ये दोनों as a fuel काम करते हैं in mixed oxide fuel reactor. So spent fuel from standard uranium based reactors is reprocessed and the extracted plutonium and U-235 are used as fuel. So this is again a mixed kind of a reactor. Okay.
Yes.
Now coming to the advantages and disadvantages.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, why there is no requirement of moderator in breeder reactors?
What?
And why there is no requirement of moderators in breeder reactors?
Why there is no requirement of moderator? No, there will be moderators. Moderator will be used in breeder reactor also. Can you just repeat your question?
Yes, ma'am. I am saying that why there is no requirement of moderator in breeder reactors.
See what happens in the breeder reactor. Breeder reactor में already एक fission हो रहा है, and then uranium is converted into plutonium. So that is why there is no moderator used. Because it is already U-238, which is converted into plutonium-239. Clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so now coming to the advantages and disadvantages. So what are the advantages of nuclear energy?
Ma'am, low cost
Carbon-free
energy
source.
and
Take it.
nearly zero carbon emission nearly.
Yes. So it is environmental friendly and it is not contributing to global warming. So it is very efficient and it is producing enormous amounts of energy. The installation costs are high, but after that the recurring costs are very low and energy produced is enormous, so it can meet the needs of both the industrial and domestic purposes. And we can recycle the waste. The nuclear waste can be recycled and it can be reprocessed. And what are the disadvantages?
Ma'am, it produces ma'am radioactive elements.
Improper disposal of the nuclear waste as well as the working with radioactive elements can cause diseases like mutations and all in the humans
Yes.
and children.
And ma'am, most importantly, ma'am, disasters like Chernobyl disasters and
Yes.
Fukushima
So
in Japan.
can you explain the Chernobyl disaster? When you have talked about it, then we can just discuss it in more detail.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who will explain?
Ma'am, there was an explosion in the walls of the nuclear plants in the Chernobyl.
The core was blown. The core was split open. And what does this core consist of? The fuel rods. So the fissionable material was exploded, and this led this fusionable material into the environment. And why did it happen?
उसकी ग्रेफाइट रोड भी ब्रेक हो गई थी ना उसके अंदर.
So actually they were performing a security test in which they had removed the control rods completely out. Control rods were out, and then the fission became uncontrollable. It led to the explosion of the core, and the core was split open in the environment. And the air was contaminated with radioactive material. Those people who were in direct contact, they suffered losses. They were actually these injuries were fatal, and eventually they lost their lives. So all the fire workers and the people who were working in the power plant, they lost their lives. And then since radioactivity was spreading to the nearby areas, so people had to be moved to other safer zones. And imagine what would have happened to the ecosystem. हमने तो सिर्फ humans को move किया. What about the plants and animals? They also suffered irreparable damages. The radioactivity mutates the nucleic acids, mutates the DNA. So radioactive accidents अगर होते हैं तो ये एक जनरेशन तक नहीं रहते. So this is carried on from generation to generation, because once your DNA is mutated, it is possible that these mutations would be carried out in the progenies. So that is why radioactive accidents are very, very risky. And also the half-life of radioactive materials is also much, so they can remain active in the environment for many, many years. So radioactive disaster को contain करना is a very difficult task. That is why we have to be very careful. There can be a natural disaster which can disrupt the reactor, or it may be due to human faults. So जो भी labor वहाँ पे है, the labor has to be very efficient and skilled. So this is a disadvantage with using nuclear energy, that its risks are uncertain. So coming to the natural disaster, can you just tell me any nuclear accident which has happened due to natural disaster?
In Fukushima, Japan, due
Yes.
to earthquake and tsunami.
Yes. So there was a tsunami and it led to the meltdown of 3 reactors over there. So these are the uncertain risks when we are using the nuclear power.
मैम वो सुनामी से न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर को हुआ था कि न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर में कुछ एरर होने से सुनामी आई थी, मतलब थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट जा रहा है ये।
Earthquake.
तो मैम ये अर्थक्वेक रेजिस्टेंट नहीं होता ये न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर्स?
That I will have to check. What are the safety features? I really don't know that is it earthquake resistant or not. I will get back to you in the next class for this question. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
This I know that this accident happened due to the earthquake and tsunami.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, you know.
Okay. And what are the other disadvantages? So we have
thermal pollution.
Pollution is there. Yes, there is, first of all, there is high installation cost because we have to make robust containments. So installation costs are very high. It has to be kept protected. So whatever people are working in the reactor, they also have to be protected from the radiation. So that is why containment has to be very, very robust. And then you have to check the repair and maintenance also. So this installation and whatever the nuclear plant we have made, we have to keep it in constant monitoring, and we require skillful labor for that. So these are the running and installation costs which would be very high with the nuclear power plants. And second disadvantage would be, again, nuclear fuel is a finite source. Uranium ore is finite, so it will get exhausted. And the other disadvantage is that the people who mine uranium, so they harm their health. So there are consequences which harm their health, and and also it is risk prone. So there is again a risk to life when we are mining the uranium. And to run a nuclear reactor, we require huge amount of water because we need a coolant which would be heated up. So, and mostly we use water in that. So it is again demanding huge amounts of water. And the last disadvantage is disposing the spent fuel. So nuclear waste, they last up to 200 to 500 years, and we have to keep them protected. They cannot be disposed of in the environment like that. So the nuclear fuel, the spent fuel, is a great problem. So what are the two kinds of nuclear fuels which we have? You know about nuclear fuels, nuclear waste, sorry. What are the two categories of nuclear wastes? So we have low waste, intermediate waste, and high level waste. So ये सारे waste, so according to their radioactivity, they have to be disposed properly. Okay.
Yes.
So now coming to the comparison between the two non-renewable resources. So let us now compare coal and nuclear fuel. So if we see the land use ज़्यादा कहाँ पे होगा? कोल में या न्यूक्लियर फ्यूल में, न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर में? Which is using
Nuclear
yes.
reactor.
So coal, because we have to mine coal extensively, so that is why the land use would be more in coal as compared to the nuclear reactors.
Yes.
And what about daily fuel requirement? अगर हम fuel requirement देखेंगे तो वो coal में ज़्यादा होगी या nuclear power plant में ज़्यादा होगी?
कोल में.
Yes. Because nuclear fuel is very efficient, you require it in very small quantities, and it produces enormous energy. So when we come to air pollution, then pollution would be more in
Coal.
yes. And what about climate change? More in
Coal.
Coal
coal.
only.
Coal.
And radioactive emissions obviously would be high in the
Nuclear
nuclear
reactor.
reactors.
Okay.
And what about risk?
In nuclear reactor.
Nuclear
only.
reactor.
Risk is obviously very
nuclear
high
reactor.
nuclear reactors. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So with this, we have completed this unit. Some of the case studies are left. So I will club the case studies of Unit 3 and Unit 4, and then I will take those case studies together. Now we will move on to another unit, which is biodiversity, which is the Unit 4. I'll just share the slides. Okay. So what do you understand by the term biodiversity?
Ma'am, the term biodiversity defines the diversity in the environment, in the nature or the biosphere.
Yes. So
For
this
example, the biotic components, abiotic components, and all the other, or everything that that consists that form the part of our environment is known as biodiversity.
Biodiversity means living components only.
Exactly. I was coming to that only. So biological diversity is the number, variety, and variability of Earth's organisms. So be it plants, be it animals, or the microorganisms. जो भी living organism है, उसकी जितनी भी diversity है, that is known as the biodiversity. So this term was given by a scientist named Walter G. Rosen. So he combined biological diversity into biodiversity, and it means the variety of organisms, variety of species, variety of populations which are present on Earth, which are existing on Earth. So living organisms, once when they came to existence on Earth, they are continuingly going on. They are continuously evolving, and due to this evolution, we now see these numerous life forms which are present on the Earth. So what is the basis for this variability? Why do you think this much diversity is present on Earth?
Maybe because of different variation of genes.
So that is a reason for biodiversity. I am
And like
asking
climate
what is
change
the
and all
need for
means
this biodiversity?
Weather
Why?
and climate change.
to survive the climate change, basically changes in environment also. So they have to adapt themselves.
This is again a reason for biodiversity, that many plants and animals, they are living in different environmental conditions, and depending upon the different environmental conditions, they evolve, they become adapted to those conditions, and they survive. So this is again leading to a variety of organisms. But my question is, what is the need for the species diversity? Why biodiversity is essential? Do you think each species has a role in the ecosystem?
Yes, ma'am.
चाहे चाहे वो decomposers ही क्यों ना हो, सबका एक अपना रोल होता है ना. So
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
what is this diversity doing to the ecosystem?
मैम वेब साइकिल को कंप्लीट करने के लिए.
What?
मैम फूड वेब को कंप्लीट करने के लिए, यानी हर एक की रिक्वायरमेंट होती है.
So it is actually providing us with the ecosystem services. Now coming to the example of bees. What is the example of what is the function of a honeybee?
To fly aphids and all.
Function of pollination.
Helps in pollination.
Exactly. Now imagine if this species is not present. अगर हमने honey bees को हटा दिया, what will happen?
There will be no honey.
Reduce in pollination and
yes, so there will be a reduction in pollination, and some of the plant species will become extinct. So
yes, तो हमें एक ऐसा मिथ भी सुनने को मिलता है कि अगर हनी बीज नहीं रहेंगी तो ह्यूमन लाइफ भी एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर सकती. क्या ये ट्रू है?
You already said that it is a myth. So there is no clear answer to such questions. See, everything has a cause and a consequence. So when there will be no honeybees, obviously some of the plants will be extinct. And if some of the plants would be extinct, then obviously there would be a decrease in the food security, which may or may not hamper the human population. So there is not a direct answer to this question. And as you already said, it is a myth. So
it is a myth for us, means हम लोगों को तो भी पता ही नहीं है, तो मुझे लगा शायद आपको पता होगा.
हाँ, मतलब obviously ये questions ऐसे होते हैं जिसका कोई definite answer नहीं होता. It is a cause and consequence relationship. One thing leads to another. So that is how you see the effects.
और मैम ये predictable है, खाली इसे future predict कर सकते हैं पहले से.
Yes, you never know what will happen. Until and unless we have not faced that situation, how can we very sure about the answer? So this is true with the pandemic also. Did we think that we will be facing this?
No, ma'am, never.
Never. And we are just learning the methods to stay with it.
Yes, ma'am.
And pandemic is also a consequence of environmental degradation. So over the year, we are harming the environment. There is climate change. So due to the climate change, many organisms, they lose their habitats. There is a loss of biodiversity, and this loss of biodiversity is leading to the exposure of new microorganisms. So the humans are facing this exposure. अभी तो एक pandemic आया है, and the future awaits many more. So this is
online ही रहना है.
No, hopefully, like we may be able, I'm not sure that about that also, but we may be able to control. So we will always find out ways. So human beings are very intelligent in making ways.
And ये कौन सा इंटेलिजेंस हुआ कि खुद ही प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट करके फिर उसका सॉल्यूशन ढूंढने में लगे रहो पूरे साल?
ऐसे ही है, मतलब what to say. Okay, not digressing much from the topic. So biodiversity is essential because each and every species has its own function in the ecosystem. So you understand the term ecological niche? So it is a particular habitat and a function which is assigned to an organism. So that is how the environment is created, the ecosystems are being made, every individual, every species has a role to play in it, and that is why we see enormous biodiversity. And this is why biodiversity is essential. तो कोई भी ऑर्गेनिज्म एक्सटिंक्ट होता है, it does put pressure on the ecosystem because each and every species is important. Okay, so how
Yes,
can,
ma'am.
since biodiversity is important and we need to track that whether it is getting hampered or not, whether some species are getting extinct or not, so we need to monitor it. And to monitor it, we need to measure it at different levels. So we have to quantify the biodiversity. So not only the measurement should not only be quantitative, but it can also be qualitative. So we have to do both qualitative and quantitative measurement of the biological diversity, and it is majorly done at 3 levels. We have the genetic diversity, we have the species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. So we are measuring the biodiversity at 3 levels: at the genetic levels, at the species level, and at the ecosystem levels. So next we will discuss the measurement of the biodiversity. I hope you all understand the significance of diversity and you understand the meaning of biodiversity. These two things are clear for you all?
जी मैम.
Okay. So now coming to the measurement of diversity. So first one is the genetic diversity.
Genetic.
What do you understand by the term genetic?
Something related to genes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it is related to genes.
Parents to other generation.
What?
From one generation to another generation.
You are not audible. So genetic diversity is variation in the genetic material. So it can be amongst organisms of a species or between different populations. So what is genetic material? We have the DNA and the RNA which is present in the cells. So this DNA is the genetic material. What is a gene?
Ma'am, a gene is basically a part of a short segment of DNA that helps in encoding proteins.
Very good. And you, I hope you also know that DNA is made up of nucleotides. ATGC से बना होता है.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am.
There is sequences of ATGC जो कि DNA को बनाती हैं. And these small sequences of ATGC forms the genes. So genes are nothing but segments of DNA. ठीक है? So the entire DNA is wrapped up in a chromosome in a cell. DNA का length बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा होता है, तो cell actually packages the DNA using some proteins and makes structures known as chromosomes. ठीक है? तो humans में 23 chromosomes होते हैं. I hope you all know.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
3 pairs.
So when we are talking about genetic diversity, what we mean is the presence of variation in the nucleotide sequence of the DNA. So when we are talking about changes in the nucleotide sequence of DNA, then automatically we are talking about the changes in the gene sequences. So genetic diversity arises out of changes in the sequences of the genes. तो एक तो जीन का सीक्वेंस चेंज हो सकता है, दूसरा जीन का एक्सप्रेशन चेंज हो सकता है. यही दो कंपोनेंट्स है जेनेटिक डाइवर्सिटी में. Now to make you understand this concept of gene expression, so let us take a very simple example. You can see a child receives genome from both the parents. आधे genes mother से आती है, आधे genes father से आते हैं. So suppose if we take up a gene for the eye color. Suppose the father has black eyes and the mother has blue eyes. So if the child is expressing blue eyes, that means जो gene का component mother का था, that is expressing. So can you just notice that the gene for eye color has two alleles? दो फॉर्म है ना, एक blue है और एक black है.
Yes,
ma'am.
तो एक जीन है, एक जीन के दो फॉर्म होते हैं, दो एलील्स होते हैं. सो दीज फॉर्म्स आर नोन एज एलील्स एंड ओनली वन ऑफ देम इज एक्सप्रेस्ड. सो जो एक्सप्रेस होता है दैट इज अ डोमिनेंट एलील, और जो एक्सप्रेस नहीं हो, जब एक्सप्रेस नहीं होता है दैट इज अ रिसेसिव फॉर्म. So variation also arises out of the expression of the gene. So कई बार क्या होता है, किसी की हाइट छोटी होती है और किसी की बड़ी होती है, तो वहां पे हाइट वाला जीन जो है वो रिसेसिव फॉर्म में होगा तो हाइट छोटी होगी, जब वो डोमिनेंट फॉर्म में होगा तो हाइट बड़ी होगी. So the expression of genes are also maintaining the genetic diversity. So that is why one organism is very different from the other organism. So this is occurring between the populations of humans also. And then if we see the crops, so एक wheat का variety दूसरे wheat के variety से बहुत different है. So this is occurring at micro levels in their genes. So differences are popping up in the genes, which is actually then being expressed phenotypically, and we show differences. Okay.
Yes.
So we will talk about we'll talk more about genetic diversity in the next class. So I think I should stop here because I have to take the attendance also. So I will explain genetic recombination, meiosis, all these in the next class. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so today I will start with zoology. Yeah. तब तक फिजिक्स वाले लोग प्लीज राइट योर अटेंडेंस इन द चैट बॉक्स बिकॉज 176 students taking the attendance is it will also take time. So the physics people today can write in the chat box and leave, while the zoology people can answer to their roll call. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
मैम लास्ट क्लास का कर लिया था आपने जिनका छूट गया था?
Yes, yes, it is done. Okay, so 401.
Ma'am, 401 present.
144401.
Ma'am,
402.
401 present.
402.
Ma'am, 401 present.
Yes, 401 I have written. 402.
Ma'am, actually, I think you can remove 2, 3, and 4 because they don't attend any classes.
Okay, in zoology.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 404. 404 is also not there. 405.
And many of the students are not in the college right now, so you must update your list.
144405.
Ma'am, 5 present.
14406.
Ma'am, 406 present.
407. 408.
Ma'am, 407 is present, but her mic isn't working.
Okay. 408. 409.
409 present, ma'am.
410. 11.
11
12.
present, ma'am.
Okay. 12. 13. 14.
14 present, ma'am.
16. 17.
16 present, ma'am.
18. Okay.
18 present, ma'am.
19 present, ma'am.
20.